Southern Kentucky's Great Outdoors on ESPN 102.7 FM and 104 The Score in Glasgow. Brought to you by Bowling Green Refrigeration, Heating and Cooling and Renegade Marine and Outdoor Center. With your host, Brian Webb. Also starring John Kirby and Sergeant J.D. Williams from Mohawk Outdoors. Josh Honeycutt from Realtree Outdoors. Also made possible by Swagger Bipods, the Van Store, Bowling Green and Glasgow. Your Can-Am headquarters. J&K Used Cars on the Bypass, United Furniture and Appliance. Our national sponsor, Big & J Long Range Attractants. Segments in part by Rockcastle Shooting Center, The Rock, and Renegade Marine, featuring Realtree's Michael Pendley Timber 2 Table Wild Game Recipes. Made possible by Pabst Beef Jerky, fueling your outdoor lifestyle. And all phone interviews via the Linex of Bowling Green hotline. Get ready for all things outdoors. Here's your host, Brian Webb.
Welcome to Southern Kentucky's Great Outdoors. This is not Brian Webb. This is John Kirby. Brian's on assignment tonight. And you all don't want to listen to me blabber, so we're going to just immediately bring in the maestro, the cooking legend, Michael Pendley, Timber to Table, Realtree's Timber to Table. Michael, how are you, buddy?
Pretty good. How's it going, guys?
Man, we're doing great. We're doing great. Getting a little rain right now, but we're hanging in there. Are you still... Looks like y'all had a good little family vacation there.
We did. We were able to get out before our oldest had to start back for class, and they let us get out and go to the beach for a few days. We didn't spend quite as long there as we normally do, but it was a good extra trip.
What do y'all typically do, Michael? That you kind of hit that whole Emerald Coast, just kind of make a couple of different day trips out of it?
We go down to the Apalachicola area.
Yeah.
If you've ever been to that area, you know there's still little fishing towns. It's not built up. It's not touristy. There's some really good seafood restaurants, and the commercial fishermen still come in and out. You can still go down to the dock and buy shrimp and mullet and whatever you want straight off the boat if you want to. It's just a really neat little area, and we go down there and we do a lot of fishing and stuff like that. Fishing was really slow this time. It had been colder than usual for down there, and I think it had pushed the fish off the coast a little bit. We tried live bait, we tried artificials, we tried dead shrimp, cut mullet, live crabs, just about everything we could think to throw at them. And,
y'all threw the gauntlet at them.
Oh yeah, and never really could get on a pattern. We'd try morning, we'd try evening. Midday, but it was still fun. It still beat work, and the cool thing about it, we left there and headed just a little bit south down to Crystal River, and the manatees were really in, and I guess we saw probably 200 manatees total on this trip.
I just want to know, did you try barbecue beanie weenies?
No. Was that been of the ticket?
Sounds like that's the only thing you didn't try, Michael.
Just about.
Now, were y'all surf fishing, or were y'all on a pier, or what were y'all doing?
We were surf fishing. Yep. The house that we usually rent down there is right on the coast, and it's got a really good flat. There's a couple of islands out in front of it, and the channel comes between those two islands, and it's got some good current, and the fish kind of hang up on that flat, and it's normally a really good place to fish. But because it had been so cool, I think that shallow water, they just left it and went into the deeper current a little bit farther out than we could get. So
yeah.
But it was, like I say, it was still a fun trip.
Still fun. Yeah, fishing beats work 9 times out of 10.
And seafood down there straight off the boat is it's hard to beat. Those seafood restaurants, the fishermen come straight to them with their catch every day, and it's just really hard to beat that fresh.
It is, yeah. I love fish. I love freshwater fish, too. But, man, it's hard to beat saltwater fish, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's just a little something different for us that we don't normally get up here. So.
Yeah. Well, you got me hungry talking about fish. What do you got cooking this week?
Well, no recipe this week. We're going to talk about a tool. Cast iron griddles like the Blackstone. They're super popular right now.
Boy, they are, aren't they?
Everybody's getting them, and good reason. I mean, I absolutely love it. I use mine. I've got a couple. I use them all the time. It's just really hard to beat. Camp Chef makes a nice one. I think Coleman even makes one. There's 2 or 3 brands out there, but Blackstone is probably the biggest. But when you get it, it's not quite ready to cook on. And If you don't season up that cooking surface is steel, raw steel. And if you don't season it up, what happens is a couple things. Your food sticks to it really bad, and it rusts anytime it gets any moisture on it. So you basically got to treat it just like a cast iron skillet.
Yeah.
And get a really good seasoning built up. And that's the first thing that we like to do. And today's Timber to Table is all about that. What we do, and one tip that a lot of people skip, sometimes when those units get shipped, there'll be a little bit of a rough patch on that cooking surface, or you'll get a little bit of water in the box, and you'll get a little rust patch on it. And what I like to do first thing, as soon as I get it out of the box and get it set up, is get one of those green Scotch-Brite pads, just like you'd use on your slate turkey call. And go over that surface really well. Make sure you knock down all those rough spots. Take off any rust that might be on there. And get all that done before you ever start to season it. And to season that, you can use just about any kind of oil you want. We use grapeseed and flaxseed as the two that we use most often. But you can use canola or peanut or whatever you want to. So.
Now, are those portable grills, Michael? I mean, can you pack that up?
They are relatively portable. They come in all sizes. I've got a little bit smaller. They run on propane. So as long as you got a propane tank there handy, you can move it around. I've got a really big one. The one we used in today's post is a 36-inch. It's big enough, to feed an entire deer camp. And then you can get smaller ones, like 2-burner, 24-inch, and several in between. Like I said, they come in different sizes, just like grills. You can buy big ones or small ones. But you season them all pretty much the same way. The first thing you want to do on them is turn that heat all the way up, turn every burner on, and let that surface get really smoking hot. And you'll start to see that steel turn a little bit different color, where the flames underneath are hitting it. And when you start to see that color change, it's hot enough. Go ahead and squeeze on a little bit of oil, like that grapeseed, flaxseed. They all work. Just drizzle some over the whole surface. Take a clean towel, and I use a welding glove, a heat-proof, heavy leather welding glove. Set of tongs works. Fold up a clean towel and rub that oil all over that surface. Just let it set. And after a few minutes, that oil is going to start to smoke really hard, and just watch it. And eventually that oil will stop smoking. When it does that, put on another layer of oil. Wipe it in really well. Get the edges, get the crevices, the sides of the cooking surface where they go up. Wipe every surface really well. And it'll stop smoking just like the first one did. Do that 2 or 3 times. Actually, do that 4 or 5 times. I usually do it at least 4. And after that, you're starting to get a pretty good seasoning built up on it. And you can stop right there, or you can go with a couple more just oil rubs. But there's a product out there that I like to use called Fuzzy Wax. And it was basically made for cast iron. It's made for seasoning cast iron. It's a blend of a couple different oils and some beeswax. And what I do is after the 4th or 5th time with the oil burning that off, I'll turn the heat down to low, and I'll let that cooking surface cool down just a little bit. And then I'll take a rag and I'll rub that fuzzy wax. It comes in like a little paste in like a little tin like shoe polish would. And I'll get some on a clean rag, and I'll rub it over that surface, that hot surface, and I'll do that to the whole thing. Let it heat back up, turn the heat back up, let it smoke. Once it stops smoking, you're good to go. You can cook anything on it. There, you can cook fried eggs. They'll slide right up just like you got them in a Teflon skillet.
Yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit with that, and folks can check this post out on Real Trees Timber to Table. And I'm sure you referenced this next question, Michael, but what kind of time frame are people looking at to get that done if they're thinking about tackling that job and getting into a Blackstone grill?
Give yourself a couple hours to get it seasoned well. You don't want to rush it. Make sure that oil comes to a really good smoke point and then burns completely off before you go to that next application. That cooked in oil, that's really what's seasoning the steel. So you want to give it plenty of time. So, hour and a half, 2 hours. should get you taken care of.
Yeah, and these grills, Michael, for what I've seen, they've been on my radar for a little bit, and they're not like crazy expensive. They're very affordable, and I'm thinking, man, what a perfect fixture for deer camp, right? Guys coming in, and you could probably cook, an absolute feast on one of those things.
Yeah, burgers, steaks, stir fries, just, the sky's the limit. Anything you can cook on a flat top, like you'd see at a diner, same deal. The little smash burgers, I've got some steel weights that I'll do real thin burger patties and put that steel weight on there and cook them till they get real nice and crispy around the edge, and then stack 2 or 3 of them up for a burger. That's really good. But you can cook anything. Vegetables, they're really handy at deer camp. I'm taking one to deer camp this weekend.
Oh, that's awesome, Michael. Best of luck to y'all at deer camp, too, by the way.
Yeah, we're going to try to knock out a few more does here in the last weekend.
Yep.
And, try to go out with a bang and have a good time. I don't think the weather's going to cooperate Saturday, but
Sunday looks good, or it did last time I looked.
Yeah, Friday morning looks good, and
Monday
Sunday looks good. So
really good.
Yeah.
It was the last day.
Yep.
Yeah.
I crunched the number earlier, fellas. That's a big deal for me to crunch numbers. We got 5 days left, so if you want to get a doe in the freezer, or you're still trying to fill that buck tag, you got 5 days to do it. Michael Pendley, always a pleasure, man. Always wish we had more time. We always learn so much every week on the show when we're listening to you, man.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, Michael. As Michael Pendley, Realtree, Timber to Table on the Line X of Bowling Green Hotline. We're going to take a break. Be right back. SOKY's Outdoors 102.7.
In stores now, Pabst Grippo's Beef Jerky. We have taken the great Pabst Beef Jerky and married it with the iconic Grippo's Barbecue Seasoning. This is a marriage made in beef jerky heaven. The thin cut of Pabst Beef Jerky is dusted to perfection with Grippo's Seasoning. Once you try it, you will know no other beef jerky compares. So the next time you're headed on a road trip to the lake or your favorite golf course, be sure to have Pabst Beef Jerky fueling your outdoor lifestyle. PabstJerky.com. Ask for us at your local store.
Hey, it's Nick Noble with the Rockcastle Gun Show here. We're talking about Swagger bipods. Do you want just your average barrel rest, or do you want to shoot with some swagger? Introducing the Swagger bipods. They expand your shooting zone with Swagger, the all-terrain hunting bipod. After more than 100 years, finally shooters have a bipod with patented, flexible, hyper-extending telescoping legs that give you the agility like never before. So get rid of stiff legs and get the bipod with infinite maneuverability. Swagger, the bipod that moves.
Not all spray-in is created equal. For example, spray-in honey. Why are all these bees following me? Or maybe spray-in tanning.
Hey, you missed a spot there on your face. Oh, that's bad.
See Line X of Bowling Green for spray and bed liners and Line X truck gear. It's the next level of complete tough gear for your truck. B&W gooseneck hitches, toolboxes, step bars, and WeatherTech door mats. Gift cards now available. Easy, affordable, and rugged. Line X. Check out more at linexofbowlinggreen.com.
We've been business partners for almost 10 years. We started with nothing.
Except big dreams.
But we really built something.
And we want to keep it, no matter what.
Yeah, tornadoes, cyber attack. We needed a plan that would get the business back up and running.
Then we found Ready.gov.
Yeah.
It has great stuff to put an emergency plan together.
Oh, yeah. Before Ready.gov, my partner here was all, a plan will cost too much. It'll take too much time.
Okay, I was wrong.
Yeah, what he means is that going to Ready.gov was all my idea.
Yeah, but I agreed it was a good one.
Well, after you saw the free templates, checklists, and ideas.
Now that we have an emergency plan, we worry less about the unforeseen.
Yeah, and worry about the foreseen. The payroll, our customers.
In other words, we have lots of reasons to get worry lines.
And therefore, lots of worry lines.
But creating an affordable emergency plan isn't one of them.
Remember when your hair wasn't gray?
Remember when you had hair?
Hey.
Go to ready.gov for details on creating an emergency preparedness plan. Becoming a success is hard work. Protecting it isn't. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the Ad Council, and this station.
Medical mistakes claim tens of thousands of lives every year. The healthcare community is working on it, but you can help. When you communicate with your doctor, when you ask more questions, you reduce your risk of suffering a medical mistake. Doctors can't answer if you don't ask. Help reduce your risk. Questions are the answer. Learn the 10 questions you must ask. Visit www.ahrq.gov. This message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, and the Ad Council.
You're going to need a bigger boat. It's time to go fishing with Renegade Marine and Outdoor Center at 415 Commerce Drive, Litchfield, Kentucky on SOKY's Great Outdoors.
Welcome back, folks. SOKY's Great Outdoors. We are Renegade Fishing segment. We've got Mr. Brad Bowles, Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, going to give us a crappie report and talk some technique after that. Brad, you there, buddy?
I am here and ready to talk some fishing, brother.
Sweet. Well, we are, as always, super stoked to have you. You're a wealth of knowledge, not just crappie fishing, hunting, all things fishing. So we're always glad to have you. What's the report look like on Barron as we speak, Brad?
Man, you know, we talked earlier, John, and it is kind of like a carbon copy of this time last year where, yet again, we've had a mild winter, and a mild winter usually means a lot of rain, and the lake right now is 9 feet above summer pool. Now, you know, it's supposed to be at 528, and it's at 561 right now. So, you know, the lake is just fishing completely, you know, different than what it should this time of year.
Yeah, you know, one thing I did notice the other day, Brad, clarity and color is really good right now, though, despite the crazy high water. Have you noticed that?
I have, and it's kind of like, you know, as we get these heavy rains, you know, the water comes in from the upper end of the lake, and you know, that's what's going to muddy first, and then that mud line will kind of work its way through the lake. And then it'll start clearing actually behind it.
Right.
So you might, like in that mid-lake area, encounter like some muddy water and debris, but if you can work on past that, then you're going to find some clear, some really good-looking water. And I'm telling you what, with these mild temperatures and our water temperature right now that we've got, heck, we've got 50, 52-degree water in January.
Right,
you know,
right.
Normally it's 38, 40 degrees this time of year. Those fish are feeding very aggressively, and you can catch them right now if you can get out there on the water in between all the rain and winds and stuff that we've got forecast.
Yeah, exactly. And in the next few days, there's a few small fronts coming in, I believe, and then Sunday, I think the bottom kind of falls out temperature-wise, and especially Monday. But tell the folks here in the next couple of days, if, say, Brad Bowles, you were fishing a tournament, you had to catch some crappie, what would you be doing right now?
Well, you know, the thing is with these weather systems coming through, you know, that's going to affect the fish some. But, you know, you're still going to be targeting your structure, but deeper structure this time of year. It's not uncommon this time of year to fish 20 to 25 foot deep and catch these fish, especially with the water up. A lot of the structure and stuff that's available to them in the water is down near the existing shoreline and deeper than that. So you're going to want to fish deep. And one thing I think that's key this time of year that a lot of people don't do is they don't downsize their baits enough.
Yeah.
You know, when these fish aren't in a real active feeding pattern, you've got to kind of coax them into biting. And what I have found I've had my most success on here lately, I've got two things that I'm using. I've got two rods rigged, and I give them this one first. It's a 32nd ounce hair jig. Now, you're saying, well, how in the world are you fishing a 32nd ounce hair jig 25 foot deep? Well, I'm rigging an 1/8 ounce egg sinker pegged with two slip bobbers, rubber stops, rubber stops.
Yep.
On my line about a foot to 18 inches above my jig. And then that allows me to get that 32nd ounce jig down there to them. Now, I'm fortunate enough that I've got the live scope so I can actually see the fish and I can see how they react to that bait as I drop it down there to them. Now, what you're going to be surprised at, all these times that we've been fishing all these brush piles, laydowns, whenever you drop a jig down there, you've immediately got fish that are circling that jig most of the time. They're checking it out.
Wow.
It's amazing. Now, whether or not they bite is a different story.
Sure.
But by downsizing that presentation, sometimes just a little thing like adding a crappie nibble some days, that makes a big difference.
Isn't it amazing?
It is.
And Brad, kind of going off it's a perfect segue of you talking about downsizing your rig. You know, we know in the wintertime, a lot of times you want to slow that presentation down as well. With water temperatures being pretty high for this time of year, how does that factor in?
Well, you hit the nail on the head right there. You know, there are days that the fish are aggressive, and you're going to know that right off the bat. As soon as you drop that jig down to whatever you're fishing, if you're getting bites right off the bat as that jig's on the fall, those are active feeding fish. You can get by with a lot of movement with your bait, and that's how you want to work that bait. You let those fish tell you, you know, what they want. But if you're not getting that bite on the fall, if you're not getting that bait with a lot of movement, what I'm finding is holding that rod perfectly still, because those jigs still will have movement to them, even if when you're holding it perfectly still, and that they want it still like that, and you'll get more bites that way.
Man, that's great stuff, Brad. And with that live scope, I'm sure it's probably opened your eyes to some things that maybe you haven't thought of, or anything of that sort. And we know that primarily crappie are going to feed up, but with that down scope, do you start out generally, you know, above the brush pile and work your way down until you start getting into some bites?
I've absolutely got to get you in the boat with me one day so that you can see this.
Oh, I'm dying to see it.
I know what structure I'm fishing, and what I like to do is I like to position myself downwind of the structure, because you want to use the wind, you know, kind of blow you back from the structure so you're not over top of the fish.
Yep.
And I'm going to drop that jig, and you're exactly right. I'm going to suspend that bait about 4 or 5 feet away from the structure and up high. You'd be surprised how many times those fish will see that bait, and you'll have an active fish. You'll see it on the live scope. He'll come racing right out of that cover and come right to that jig, and you'll see him bite your jig.
Man, that's got to be cool.
Oh, it's amazing. This past week, I was fishing a big standing tree, and as I'm lowering my jig down to 23 foot of water where I'm seeing a fish that I didn't see alongside the tree darts right out as my jig's falling and bites it.
Wow.
So it's pretty amazing, the technology. But, you know, the other jig that I'm using, the other bait that I'm using, and this is going to be kind of surprising to a lot of people, it's a 48-ounce Bobby Garland itty bit. And basically all this is an ice fishing jig.
Yep.
It's a little bitty presentation. So if I catch 3 or 4 on the hair jig and the rest of the school is just kind of shut down, they're not active, they're not really interested, I give them that little Bobby Garland itty bit, and man, a lot of times it's game on again. And it's crazy also that along with these crappie down there, you've got a lot of big bluegill, and I'm catching some of the biggest bluegill in January that I've ever caught before. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Speaking of technology, you know, you're talking about that live feed, which sounds pretty cool. What are 2 or 3 other different things that you use or would advise crappie fishermen, just as far as modern tech goes, that might make things a little bit easier for them?
You know, all this stuff it's just amazing how far technology has come. I mean, I started off crappie fishing years ago. I mean, I'm 50. That sounds just archaic to me right now.
No. You're in better shape than I am, so you're good. You started out with 2D, I'm sure, right?
A 2D sonar, and I had a fly rod, a 9-foot fly rod with a spinning reel on it. You know, it was way too flimsy. Now we've got just all these quality rod manufacturers with different, you know, lengths and the way they're made as far as how strong they are. You know, there's all kinds of different things. But an absolute must on anybody's boat is a good trolling motor. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
Boat control is so crucial when you're setting up on these spots and fishing.
Especially on finicky fish, Brad, right? I mean, it is imperative to have that boat where it needs to be and not over the brush pile running the fish out, right?
It really is. And I tell you, again, by downsizing and using these small jigs and with the aid of live scope, I'm able to go up to a thick brush pile and actually thread my bait in and out of these limbs and get it worked down in deep in those brush piles, and I'm catching fish that I've never been able to get to before because you'd always just stay tangled up. So again, your boat control being positioned over that pile to where you're completely vertical over those fish, that's so key. Windy days, that's a struggle because you're fighting to be on that spot. So a good trolling motor, good electronics. I mean, not everybody is going to go out and spend the money for the live scope. You don't have to have it, but you've just really got to have a good working knowledge of your electronics and know what you're seeing on that graph. And you want to fish structure. You always want to be fishing something. I tell people all the time, if you're not catching any fish, stop and ask yourself, what am I fishing? And if you can't answer that question, well, right there's your problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you've got to be on a brush pile. You've got to be on a break line. It may not be a brush pile. Fish may be on a channel ledge, a drop-off, suspended off of it. But at least you're fishing a channel drop-off. You know what you're fishing all the time.
Absolutely. And Brad, we got about 2 minutes here. And anybody that knows Brad Bowles knows he's entirely too humble to admit this. But you're a really good crappie fisherman. And I know that this live scope, or I'd like to know how you feel about it, and just how much more effective do you feel as a fisherman having that tool at your disposal?
It's amazing technology. I know there's some haters that are worried that we're going to deplete the crappie population in all of our lakes. But the truth of the matter is I see so many more fish that I don't catch and don't bite. But as far as being able to learn fishing behavior and see how they react to your lures, and then be able to precision pick apart cover to catch more fish, it's a game changer. It really is.
That's well said. And Brad, nobody knows better. A lot of parallels in fishing and hunting, and learning that fish behavior it can be so important. I'm sure the stuff that you're learning is probably mind-blowing at times, right?
It really is. Real quick, and I know we don't have much time, I'll tell you a real quick story.
Yep.
I'm fishing a big brush pile. I'm coming to it. It's absolutely loaded with fish, and I was only able to catch 3 off of it. Well, I leave and come back to it later that afternoon, and, I mean, it had like probably 100 fish on it. When I came back that afternoon, there wasn't a single fish on it at all. They had all left within a span of a few hours. What I think they were doing is they weren't actively feeding on that brush pile because I only caught 3 of them. When I came back and they were gone, they're out there feeding on suspended schools of shad.
So they were just staging on that structure then, pretty much, waiting to feed. Yeah, wow.
Which, again, I'd have never known that before without the live scope and seeing that firsthand. You know, just learning that fishing behavior and being able to present that lure right in their face, you're going to get more bites that way, but it's not automatic that they're going to bite. I drop my jig down to a lot of fish. They look at it, but they don't take it.
Man, that's awesome stuff, Brad. Listen, I know you're a busy man. You got things to do, but we'll get back on here in a couple of weeks, talk more crappie fishing, and keep you on longer. We'll get into some deer harvest statistics and some data and stuff, if that sounds good.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you guys about your all's deer season. Man, you all had a heck of a deer season.
It was a good time, wasn't it, Josh?
Yeah, we had good fun. Good fun for sure.
Well,
Brad, always a pleasure, man. We'll get you back on here in a couple of weeks when the schedules work out.
And by the way, I think you killed a pretty dang good one too, right?
Hey, a blind hog finds an acorn every now and then.
Yeah, there's that humble part I was talking about.
Yeah. Hey, Kirby, you got to get out and get in the boat with me, brother.
Man, don't threaten me with a good time, Brad.
Yeah, well, we might have to break out the ice fishing gear next week to do it, but we might do it, okay?
We'll do it, man. Sounds great. Thanks so much, Brad. Y'all have a great evening, all right?
All right, buddy. You too. You guys take care.
Yep. Thanks to Brad Bowles. Always a pleasure, Kentucky Fish and Wildlife. We're going to take a break. Be right back. ESPN 102.7.
And now a weather update. Winds out of the south-southeast at 9 miles an hour.
Citizens of America, this is a message from feedthepig.org. Do not be alarmed. We are here to help you save yourself. According to public records, Americans spent more money than they earned in 2005. This is the first negative savings rate in the U.S. since the Great Depression. America, we must change our behavior. We need to stop spending every dime we earn and start feeding the pig. We must start putting away a piece of our paycheck. On the 1st and the 15th, we must pay ourselves before we pay anyone or anything. We must make a budget, and yes, even consider cutting up a credit card. And we must tell a friend to do the same. America, to start moving in the right direction, we must start a movement. Join us at feedthepig.org. Find the benefits of saving for every stage of life. Log on to feedthepig.org today.
And for more traffic updates, brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Hi, I'd like to report a bear hug.
Uh-huh, okay.
Well, we were building a bonfire, and I saw some, dry brush and leaves around, so, I said to move the bonfire somewhere else, and out of nowhere, Smokey Bear shows up and hugs me.
So you noticed some wildfire hazards and moved your bonfire to a safer location.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Smokey, all right. He likes it when people help prevent wildfires. It hits him close to home. Not everybody gets the hug, my friend. So that's pretty special to get a hug from Smokey Bear.
So it was him. Hey, guys, I told you it was Smokey.
Okay, well, congratulations, my friend. And thanks for calling. There are many ways to prevent a wildfire. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
If there was an emergency, would your family have enough water and non-perishable food to last 3 days? We asked families across the country. Here are some of their answers.
Well, we depend mostly on our meats, on our refrigerator, on, cooking that way, so most of our foods are in the refrigerator. Once the electricity goes out, your refrigerator goes out, so you can only use that for a certain amount of time.
We usually eat fresh food daily.
In the pantry we have like granola bars and canned tomatoes,
True. That's true, but that's really not survival food. Tomato paste.
The brand of dog food that I do purchase for the dogs, as well as the cats, are edible by humans. We could even share the same bowls.
How about my own bowl?
You got your own bowl.
Is your plan any better? To learn more about making an emergency plan for your family, go to ready.gov. This message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Ad Council.
Hunting in East Beverly Hills getting sorry every day. Me and Duke went as far back in the brush as you could go. The only thing we flushed out was a couple of real estate agents.
It's time to do some hunting on SOKY's Great Outdoors, brought to you by Rockcastle Shooting Center at Park Mammoth Resort, 22850 Louisville Road in Park City, Kentucky.
Welcome back, folks. Southern Kentucky's Great Outdoors hunting segment. Josh Honeycutt and I going to talk some hunting here, and we're going to kind of wrap up what we were talking about last week, Josh, just kind of out-of-state hunting in general, and how we got it done, how you can get it done, and kind of the logistics of it all. With that said, lead us off there, man. Kind of pick us up where we left last week.
Yeah, we were talking more tactical last week. We're kind of game planning, so to speak, and explaining some of the ins and outs of, the fundamentals of maybe how to make it happen and happen on a budget. This week we're going to talk a little bit more about the legality side of it, because there's definitely things to think about there as well, especially for deer hunters who have never been on an out-of-state hunt. There's things to think about that you wouldn't think about if you were just hunting in Kentucky.
Yeah, that's a great point, Josh, and it's not just we have to worry about game laws while we're actively hunting, right? I mean, there's stuff that applies beforehand, and there's stuff that applies post-hunt, especially when you harvest an animal.
Yeah, and right off, whenever you're going on an out-of-state hunt, the first thing you got to think about is the tags and license requirement. A lot of states throughout the country have different procedures, different requirements than we have here in Kentucky. We just go to Walmart or go online and buy a deer tag and hunting license. Or if you prefer to get the sportsman's license, that covers a lot of different things. But, other states, they just require a license or just require a tag, or they require both, and they also require a stamp of some sort, like a conservation stamp. Or if you're hunting on public land, they require a public land stamp. There's so many things to think about, and that's just part of the equation.
Yeah, Josh, that's great stuff, and something else to consider too. Ohio, where we hunted this year out of state, or one of the places. It's a pretty straightforward state, really, but there's some kind of screwy states out there where you're going to have to buy a tag for a specific season, for a specific weapon, I should say. So definitely, you want to really do your due diligence on that front and figure out how you can stay legal, because, you want to do so.
For sure. And my best tip, best advice on any time you plan to hunt a state that's different, and you won't know if it's different until you research it, but always read the hunting regs from cover to cover. That's the only way you're going to familiarize yourself with every game law that they have on the books.
Yeah, and when in doubt, pick up the phone, Google Fish and Wildlife for that state and make a phone call. Most of the time, you're going to find they're absolutely happy to help you out in any way.
For sure, and that's a great point, because a lot of the times game laws can be very gray, or at least they're worded in a manner that's somewhat difficult to interpret. Most of them aren't. Most of them are black and white, but some of them, they might read a little confusing. So, like you said, I've done that many times, just calling the DNR. Generally, whenever I hunt a state for the first time, and I'll probably do this at least, once every 4 to 5 years, just to make sure. I read the regs every year, but what I'll do the first time I hunt a state, and every 4 or 5 years, I will call them and I'll talk to someone in the licensing department, someone in, and someone in the conservation officer department, and just basically make sure that everything that I'm reading correctly, and it matches up to what they're telling me.
Yeah, that's great stuff, Josh. And also, I think a lot of folks might be pleasantly surprised, that if, say you're going to tackle some public land in a state in which you haven't hunted before, you'll probably be surprised that a lot of game wardens and officers are pretty forthright with information regarding public lands and kind of what they see, that they're spending a lot of time burning a lot of leather on those lands. And a lot of them will kind of fill you in and give you an idea of where to start at least, or at least maybe even eliminate some property, and get you started that way. So, yeah, doing your due diligence, it's just such a good thing on all fronts, really.
Sure. Once you're on the hunt, you've got to think about what weapons are allowed too, because not every state's like Kentucky where you can pack any rifle you want. Prime example is Ohio.
Yeah.
They have a gun season, but you can't pack just any rifle that you desire during their gun season. They're a straight wall state, so you're basically limited to cartridges that are straight wall cartridges only.
And something else too that I just learned this year prior to hunting up there, they are a very strict 3-round state too. You can't have more than 3 rounds in your gun, one in the chamber and 2 in the magazine or whatever. So they're very strict on that too. So something else to kind of keep in mind and keep an eye out for.
Yeah, that's a great point. And of course, whenever you're looking after the hunt too, there's things to keep in mind as well, especially when you're bringing stuff back in state, back into Kentucky. And it doesn't just apply to Kentucky. Most states have these laws, even if you're just driving through them to get back home. Whenever you kill a deer out of state, every state's going to be different. But just purely talking about what you got to do to get it back to Kentucky, you have to process that meat before you bring it back, pretty much.
Absolutely, and I bared witness to that. Josh, with the buck he killed, our number 1 target buck. You spent a good little while caping that deer out, making sure it was legal to cross the lines there.
Yeah, we killed 2. You and I both killed really good bucks. I opted to get my shoulder mount done for my deer, but in order to bring that back home to my taxidermist that I use, I had to basically cape the deer normally, like you normally would, all the way down to the base of the skull. And then after that, I took time, and it takes a while. It's not easy to do, and it's time consuming. But I caped it all the way off the skull. Then I skull capped it, and I cleaned all the brain matter and blood and tissue off of that skull cap before we ever left Ohio.
And we deboned the meat before we even left the property, so we were good on that front too.
Right, and that's something that you have to do. It's a Kentucky law. In order to bring a deer back into the state of Kentucky, you have to do these things to be legal to cross state lines. Absolutely.
And something else, it might sound daunting to you to have to cut your own deer up in the field, to debone it. But, Josh and I were talking while we were doing both of our deer, really the anatomy of a deer, how the muscles lay out and everything, it pretty much tells you where to cut. It's not a difficult process if you've never done it. Don't let it overwhelm you or intimidate you.
Absolutely. And honestly, in a lot of ways, it kind of can cut down on how much time you spend on that deer, because you're going to end up doing that anyway, unless you go to a processor. And that's another option you can use. Like if you're hunting out of state, you can take that deer to a processor that's in the state you're hunting in. It's just going to require another trip to go back up there and get it. But, it actually can cut down, and I wouldn't say cut down on the time, but you're not really spending any more time or effort or energy to break that deer down in the field, because you're honestly spending less time. If you break that deer down in the field, you don't even have to gut the animal.
Yep.
If you're gonna cut the meat off of it and debone it right there, you can get all the meat off of that animal without even gutting it. That includes the tenderloin. You can use the gutless method and still get every ounce of meat off of that deer that you normally would by gutting it first.
Yeah, Josh is exactly right, and personally, I think that's the way to go. And one of the benefits of hunting with Josh, he's smarter than I am, and he brought this to my attention. But, Josh, had we missed a turn or taken a wrong turn from us leaving the property that we were hunting back to our hotel with the deer, especially years where we took to the hotel to cape it, had we taken a wrong turn, we could have been in a state that borders the state that we were in, and we could have kind of unknowingly broke a law there. And you brought that to my attention, and so I guess my navigating skills, and you figured we might get lost in another state.
I just know that you're a top 10 navigator worldwide. So, but I just wanted to remind you that. But yeah, no, we were hunting in southeastern Ohio, so we were actually, I guess as the crow flies, we were probably hunting, within maybe just a few miles probably of the river.
Right.
And, we were hunting in Gallia County. That's the actual county that we were in. And it's right there kind of where West Virginia and Kentucky and Ohio kind of come together. So, we were obviously staying in a hotel in Ohio as well, but it was really close to the river, as you mentioned. And so, yeah, it could have been, we took that deer. We basically broke that deer down, the meat all the way down, and deboned it, put it in coolers, and then we basically caped the deer all the way down to the base of the skull and took it back to the hotel room. I laid out like the biggest pile of trash bags you've ever seen in your life. We literally bought a whole bag of trash bags, and I just layered them all over that hotel room floor to keep from making a mess. But that's where I took it back to cape it off the skull, because it's a long process. It took me about 2 hours to do that.
Yeah. And
just because I was trying to take care, I've done that several times because I've killed other deer out of state and brought them home, and to do that I had to cape them all the way off the skull too. But it's a long process for someone who doesn't do it very often. Like I said, I've only done that 4 or 5 times. So took it back to the hotel room. But as you mentioned, if you're not careful, if you're hunting right there close to the border, you could easily go back across state lines and not even think about it. But luckily I was thinking that night, and of course we never had to go into West Virginia anyway. But if you take a wrong turn, it's easy to make a mistake, and it's easy to make an honest mistake
mistake, yeah.
But fortunately we had all our bases covered there, and we didn't do that. But it's just one of those things. When you're hunting out of state, you got to think about a lot of things. You got to think about a lot of things when you're hunting here at home. But
sure.
You got to think about even more stuff whenever you go elsewhere.
Man, that's great stuff, Josh. We got about a minute and a half, and we're going to take a break and then come back. But before we do that, anything else that comes to mind that you'd like to get out there about out-of-state hunting? One last thing, and I'll turn it over to you, is if you wait around until you're ready to go on an adventure like that, you're never going to do it. My advice is to just take the plunge, find a good hunting buddy, do some due diligence, and go do it, and make some memories.
Yeah, and if you want to start out small, and you don't want to lease a piece of property or spend the money that it would require to do so, you can start small. You can get 3 or 4 guys together, or even just one other person. But the more people you get together, the lower your overall costs are going to be. So if you want to do it and do it on a budget, you could even go out and find some public land, scout it. Get 2 or 3 of your buddies, 4 of your buddies together, and then go and hit a big piece of public. That you can kill big deer on public land. Matter of fact, our lease borders public land, and we determined that the biggest buck that lived there is more than likely spending most of his time on that piece of public.
Yeah, and I'd say the majority of the bucks on our property spend at least some of their time on that public. So Josh is right. There's a lot of opportunities in a lot of our bordering states, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, all have great public land. And like I said, if you wait around until you're ready, you're never going to do it. So just jump in there and do it. Make some memories. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We're going to talk some more deer hunting. ESPN 102.7.
Boy, Earl, I sure am glad you're driving us to the hunting spot this year.
Uh-huh.
Say, Earl, it's mighty cold out today. Did you ever upgrade to a carrier like I told you to?
Nah, I still get one of them others.
Huh. Well, I hope you trust it, because later on this evening when we get done hunting, I'll be back at the house curled up in my recliner with a nice cold glass of buttermilk and my feet up. Roasty, toasty warm.
My heater's fine.
You better hope so, because if it ain't, Luann's going to be blowing your phone up here soon.
I ain't worried about Luann, buddy. Yeah.
Earl, where on earth are you at? I am at home. This heater is busted, and I'm freezing my piggies off. Get home right now.
All right.
Now, Earl, I can see you're mad, and I ain't happy about this neither, because now we ain't going to get to go hunting, but you should have turned to the experts and upgraded a carrier like I told you. Your comfort is their concern, Cat Daddy, not talking.
You quiet now.
All right.
Bowling Green Refrigeration, Heating, and Cooling. Servicing Carrier and all others. 270-782-5391.
J&K Used Cars is the place to go when you need a quality automobile at an affordable price. Stop in at 670 on the Bypass in Bowling Green and see this week's special. A 2003 Ford Explorer Sport Track, 4-wheel drive, 4-door truck comes with good miles, V6 engine, sport wheels, power options, step bar, and more for just $89.95. Hurry in because at that price it won't last long. J&K Used Cars with over 40 years of serving the community with affordable prices on quality automobiles. Visit J&K on the Bypass and online at jnkusedcars.com.
Okay, I'm on 65 right now. Which exit do I take?
You're going to want to take I-165.
No, I'm on I-65.
No, take I-165. Should be on the sign.
I'm pretty sure that's not a 1 there. I'm pretty sure that's just another I. I-65?
Aye. Well, ahoy, Polloy.
Look, I'm looking at it. I just don't see a 1 there. It's just I-6.
Suffering from post-natural confusion? See Gary Force Paint and Body Shop. iCar Gold Shop, certified with a lifetime warranty. 311 Vanderbilt Drive behind the Scottsville Road Post Office.
Welcome back, folks. Going to continue the conversation at deer hunting, which doesn't upset me, and I know it doesn't Josh either. We love our deer hunting. With that said, last minute game plan for filling a tag, Josh. Like I said, I crunched some numbers earlier today. I still have a headache from it. We've got 5 days left, and the weather doesn't look all that great until the last day, really. So let's get into it.
Yeah, so, we're bringing it back in state now. We just finished wrapping up kind of our discussion on our Ohio season and our trips up there, and we broke that down over the course of several weeks and talked a lot about that topic. But we're bringing it back in state now since we've only got a few days left of deer season, and the forecast is pretty warm. So the topic of discussion here for the final few days of the Kentucky deer season is going to be how to kill a buck on a warm winter day.
Yep. Sorry, go ahead, man. You're
No, it's fine. But it's one of those things where, Christmas is long gone. The Super Bowl's in sight. The Kardashians are already modeling 2020 swimsuits on the gram. It's just, the time is running out. Don't ask me how I know that bit about the Kardashians.
That was my next question, but I won't ask now because you asked me not to. Yeah, man, 5 days, weather's not great. What are some tips and some thoughts you have on filling a tag? And some of this kind of depends on, are you trying to still fill a buck tag or a doe tag? That's going to really kind of depend on which way you go here.
For sure, and I'm going to try to keep things kind of general. I know I said how to kill a buck on a warm winter day, but this, the things that I'm going to focus on mainly apply either way, regardless of what your goal is, whether it's a buck, doe, or mature buck or young buck. It's really just geared toward deer in general. But kind of going to break it down into 4 separate sections. One's going to be your pre-hunt prep. Number 2 will be knowing, when to capitalize, and obviously we don't have a lot of time left, so take that part with a little bit of grain of salt, or take it with a grain of salt. Step 3 or phase 3 is going to be more about tactics, while you're on the hunt. And then the final phase will be basically Hail Mary, and we're going to probably save that. I would save your quote-unquote Hail Mary for probably Sunday or Monday, because that's the last 2 days of the season.
Well, and the weather looks the best those 2 days, too, so definitely be worth hunting those last 2 days. So let's hit the first one, Josh.
Whenever it's warm out there, deer don't have to burn as many calories to stay warm. The sun pretty much does that for them. As such, you don't need your late season attire either. Something that I'm guilty of is dressing too warm on warm winter days.
Yeah, especially for the walk-in. Generally I will wear as little as possible walking in, and then put clothes on as needed. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yes. And that's a solid point that you bring up too. You need to underdress for the walk-in. Don't wear enough to keep you comfortable when you're walking to the tree stand or the blind on these warm days that we have ahead. actually go less. Be cold when you walk.
You want to start out cold, because once you get that heart rate up a little bit, especially if you have a decent walk ahead, you're going to warm up, and you're probably even going to sweat a little bit, even with wearing very little clothes, especially for guys carrying a lot of gear. So yeah, that's a great point. Layering's the way to go there.
Yeah, and there's more to it than we commonly think. We've heard it a million times. You don't want to sweat walking. I think that's been in every other outdoor article ever written.
Yeah.
But what we don't hear a lot of is why that's the case. And the reason for that isn't just because you smell more, you stink more. There's more to it than just that. In dry, cold air, that produces tougher scenting conditions for a whitetail. In contrast, a deer smells better, their nose works better whenever it's warmer, whenever it's more humid. Scent particles travel further in that condition, and the warm temps with moderate to high humidity pretty much ignites a buck's nose. So that's the main reason. But have you ever seen a deer lick its nose? Every one of us have. We've seen a deer that was trying to smell something, whether he's throwing his nose up in there at you or somebody else or something else. We've seen it throw its nose up and start licking those nostrils.
Absolutely, yep. So what else you got, Josh?
Well, they do that because, their olfactory system, the olfactory cells in their nose, they work better whenever they're moist, whenever the air is moist. So in those drier conditions, or whenever the humidity is a little bit lower, they tend to lick those nostrils just a little bit more, with a little more frequency, just to keep them wet. Because whenever the scent particle hits those olfactory cells, it causes a chain reaction, a chemical reaction, and it actually decodes those cells after it hits those. And if they're moist, it decodes a little faster. Now, in the grand scheme of things, when we're talking about this, it's all in milliseconds anyway. It's not like it makes that big of a difference. However, it can make a difference, whenever you underdress, walk into the tree stand, because while it might not keep you, not sweating, might not keep you from being smelled or detected by a deer, that said, it could prove enough to give you a few more seconds to get the shot off before that deer wins you, or that deer might think that you're a little bit further away than you actually are, and might not classify you as big of a threat as you truly are.
Man, that's a great point, Josh. Really good stuff there, man. What kind of continuing on with that? What else you got?
Yeah, the next thing in mind is waiting for the right time, and obviously you can't wait much. In fact, for the last few days of the season, we've got 5, as you mentioned. I wouldn't encourage waiting. However, if you've only got 2 days within the next 5 days that you can hunt, it might be worth waiting for one of these conditions if you see it on the horizon. I've personally not even looked at the forecast past the temperature to see if any of these things are going to be hitting. So take everything I'm saying here with a grain of salt. I wouldn't tell you to wish away or wait your final days of the deer season. Matter of fact, I would just get out there. But the next few things that I'm talking about is kind of more along the lines of just January in general. So next year, if you're haven't filled a tag by the first day or first couple days of January, you might keep these things in mind. But like any day of the season, certain conditions are optimal for deer movement. You obviously can't rely on cold weather for the next few days, because we're not going to have that until Monday, the last day of the season. But there are certain other triggers out there that will get deer up on their feet, and we experienced some of this on our Ohio hunt. If it's been monotonously cold for days, a sudden warm-up can actually spark a flurry of daytime movement.
Yep.
Late season daylight action doesn't just hinge on cold weather. Sudden changes work too, and if that's a surprising warm front, you can bet they'll be up on their feet.
Absolutely. And Josh, I know you've got several other things to mention, and I don't know what they are, but I will say, I know you probably would mention this, so much of what Josh is probably about to say depends on how pressured your deer are. Just kind of want to throw that out there, because that's going to make a big difference on your strategy and game plan.
Absolutely. Something else to think about moving forward is morning hunts, because that's on warm days generally the coldest temperature is going to be at dawn. So don't overlook a morning hunt, especially if you've got a morning pattern on a deer. Temperature aside, 4 other things to keep that will get deer on their feet: there's coming storm fronts, sudden rain events, rising barometric pressures, especially whenever they eclipse that 30 mark or get close to it, and then whenever the moon overhead underfoot position lines up with dawn and dusk. These can put deer up on their feet as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What else you got?
And then tactically speaking, we're kind of moving into the final phase here. There are certain things you can do to put that late season warm weather buck in the crosshairs, or at least, this time of year in Kentucky, because it's bow season in your sights. But basically, historically, when it's warm, I've had better late season hunts over or near green food sources. Deer seem to avoid those high carb grains and flock to nutrient rich plant species whenever that mercury starts climbing. Alfalfa, beets, clover, radishes, turnips, wheat, and other popular food plot species become more viable at that point.
Yeah, look, even a green field, if you're hunting in an area that doesn't have a lot of crops or doesn't even have pasture-type ground, you've got the only green field around, man, hunt it.
Yeah, and that can be grass.
Absolutely.
Deer don't target, most of the grass species. They'll feed on them here and there, but they tend to do so more whenever it warms up. Some natural food sources to focus on if you don't have the aforementioned things: forbs and other greenery that's in the timber. There are green things in the deer woods. You just got to find where they're at. White cedar is a prime food source late in the year, especially once more desirable options are depleted. And then obviously we have this around here. I've got a couple farms that have these as well. They're a little more uncommon than your typical mash trees, but honey locust and Osage orange are great late season trees to focus on.
Yep, the old hedge apple. Something that's lost. It's lost on me too. It's lost on a lot of hunters, and it's been lost on me for a long time. But just how much natural browse there is out there for a deer, and how much of their diet consists of natural browse. It's a huge part of their diet.
Absolutely. Great point. And, regardless of what deer prefer, the key thing is to find whatever is limited. Deer are like humans. They want what they can't have. And if there's going to be a limited food source out there there's not much left of, that can be good too. Remaining pockets of acorns and beech
you
nuts.
might find some red oaks. Yeah, I'd say most of the white oaks have been scooped up. But, yeah, like you said, a pocket of red oaks could be dynamite right now. Yeah,
for sure. And here in Kentucky, where you can hunt over mineral can be really good on a late winter, mid-January, any time in January really. But hunting over mineral during a warm spell can be really good. My trail cameras have proven, at least to me, that the deer use wintertime mineral licks more during those warmer spells. It's because they've suddenly started taking in more green foods, and that disrupts their digestive system. And mineral licks help them remedy that.
Absolutely. Yeah, shameless plug here. The Big and J Meltdown is one of my favorite minerals I've ever used. Deer stay on it a lot longer in the fall than any other mineral I've used. And like Josh said, these warm days late in the year, early in the year in this case, they absolutely will hammer it.
For sure. And don't forget water. That's a key thing even during the late season. And then, when it comes to bedding, don't be pigeonholed into your typical late season bedding. They're not all going to be on south-facing slopes on warm days. You just got to find those pockets of really thick, nasty cover that are close to good quality food that give them both visual, audible, and winding advantages. Maybe reconsider some of those thermal hubs that you focused on during the early season in rut. Thickets that are, adjacent to food sources. Anywhere basically that you've not pressured throughout the season, those are going to be good spots to try. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's great stuff, Josh. And I'll just add entry and exit, how important that is, especially this time of year. A lot of bucks will bed in places where they can really utilize their eyesight and they can see you coming. So take that path of most resistance. In a lot of cases, go that extra mile for the good entry and the good exit.
Right, and you get down to the last 2 or 3 days of the season, don't be afraid. As long as you can have the good quality entry route that John just mentioned, as long as you can get in there without being seen, don't be afraid to get in there tight to the beds, because like I said, you've only got 2 or 3 days left come the weekend. And, come that time, I tend to be more aggressive whenever time's running out than reserved. And so if you're still packing your tag, get closer to those bedding areas, especially since it's going to be warm. They're not going to move as far from their beds in daylight.
Man, great stuff, Josh. Always a pleasure, man. We're out of time. Always fun doing this show with you and talking deer and any other species we're hunting at the time. We'll be back here next Wednesday, 5 o'clock. SOKY's Great Outdoors, ESPN 102.7.